Welcome back, guys. Now we will continue with our valvular pathologies. In the last video, we completed our general anatomy and general physiology. Okay, and I'm sure that that's going to be very helpful when we start dealing with our individual lesions. Okay, so we'll start with MVP, that is mitral valve prolapse. Okay, so this is, as you know, this is also called Barlow syndrome, or it is also called floppy valve syndrome. So basically, the name suggests that the valve's integrity is not maintained. So when the valve closes, it is not able to maintain or sustain its shape against this upward thrust caused by the left ventricle. Okay, so what are the causes? The first cause is any kind of myxomatous degeneration. Okay, myxomatous means anything that is like a myxoma. Okay, what does that mean? It means gelatinous, right? So a firm structure that is supposed to withhold its integrity or shape against a very fiercely contracting ventricle, if it becomes gelatinous, of course it is going to bulge into the left atrium. Okay, so what happens is there's a defect in the type 3 collagen. Okay, and this is due to this leads to broken myofibrils. Okay, so the valve bulges upwards. Okay, and initially, of course, it's asymptomatic, although it does cause minor hemodynamic changes, but initially it is asymptomatic. But if you leave it there untreated long enough, it will lead to complications such as MR. Okay, the second cause is connective tissue diseases, and the first example for that is Marfan syndrome. Okay, details you can read from genetics, or you'll also read them in pediatrics. So I'll just touch it. I'll just brief upon it for some time. So it happens due to chromosome 15 defect. It has the chromosome has a fibrillin 1 gene. So basically the defect lies here. Okay, it's an important MCQ, will be asked. And it is also associated with arachnodactyly. Okay, arachno means like a spider. Arachnid means a spider. So you'll see a thumb sign which will be positive in this. What is the thumb sign? As you can see, this person can place his or her thumb like this. When you will do this, your thumb will not be protruding beyond your palmar margin. Okay, so and the mortality in Marfan syndrome is most commonly due to aortic dissection. All right. So the second cause is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, also called the rubber man syndrome. Okay, where you have this stretchy skin. So wherever there is connective tissue in the body, that becomes stretchy, including the valves. Okay. The third cause is osteogenesis imperfecta. Okay. Now the third type of causes, the third cause is straight back syndrome. Okay, what happens in this? There is loss of thoracic kyphosis. All right. Because of this, what will happen is there will be a decrease in the anterior posterior diameter of the chest. Okay, so there will be less space for the heart, and the heart will be sandwiched between thoracic vertebra and the sternum and the ribcage. Okay, so what will this cause is, so whenever due to this reduced space, this will cause decreased maneuverability for the heart based on the pressure changes. So eventually it will cause increased pressure in the heart. Okay, and since the left ventricle is already contracting at high pressures, this will lead to extra pressure on the increased pressure on the valve, and this will cause the bulging. Okay, other causes are rheumatic fever, which will cause RHD. So basically there will be vegetations on the valve, like along the line of closure as discussed earlier, and which will compromise the integrity of the valve. Okay, subacute bacterial endocarditis also causes this. Dilated cardiomyopathy. Okay, this is also one of the causes. Basically what happens is that when there is a ventricular dilatation, it also leads to annular dilatation. Okay, what does that mean is the annulus over which you have your valve, that also gets dilated, due to which there is stretching of the valvular cusps, and due to that the integrity of the valve is compromised, and the last cause is ASD. Okay, so now we'll just look into the pathophysiology of this disease, like what is happening inside the heart. Okay, so the valve leaflet is pushed higher during isovolumetric contraction. Of course, like that time both the valves are closed, and especially in systole it is most pronounced. Okay, so it causes increased stress on the chordae tendineae and the papillary muscles. Okay, this will cause subendocardial ischemia. How does this happen is because if there is consistent stress on a tissue, okay, especially the adjacent myocardium, this will lead to hypoxia. Okay, because obviously the blood that is going there is going to be utilized for reducing the stress related damages. Okay, so this will lead to hypoxia, and because of hypoxia there will be ischemia, and ischemia it will lead to ventricular arrhythmias. Okay, as you can see here, this is the valve which has become floppy, and it is bulging into the left atrium, and after some time it will start leaking. Okay, so now because of this stress we mentioned on the chordae and the papillary muscles, what will happen is there will be a auscultatory finding. It will be a mid-systolic click. Okay, this happens because maximum tension develops during the middle of the systole. Okay, so when is the middle of the systole? It is between S1 and S2. Okay, like we have learned in cardiac cycle, S1, S2 is systole, S2, S1 is diastole. All right, so the middle of the systole is some point like this. Okay, so this area will correspond with the mid-systolic click of mitral valve prolapse. All right, so any question mentions mid-systolic click, you straight away start thinking about mitral valve prolapse. Okay, I don't think you will be getting this mid-systolic click in any other question unless it is a mixed lesion. Okay, so like we discussed before, due to sudden tension in the chordae, we get this click. Okay, so what will happen is, after this click, okay, and if it's a long-standing prolapse, what will happen is it will give way eventually and cause mitral regurgitation. Okay, so beyond this mid-systolic click, what will happen is the blood will start rushing towards the left atrium, which will cause a late systolic ejection crescendo of the leaking blood. Okay, so this leak which is happening will eventually lead to LVF. So you can say in mitral valve prolapse untreated, this is the cause of death later. Okay, so now the problem here arises is that this ejection systolic murmur we also hear in aortic stenosis and pulmonary stenosis. All right, why do we hear it? We hear this in these diseases because any kind of outlet obstruction, all right, outlet obstruction in which the blood is unable to leave the heart. Okay, there you will always hear this kind of ejection systolic murmur. Okay, the blood is not able to eject because there is a considerable amount of resistance which is stopping the blood to leave the heart. So examples like HOCM, you will see this kind of murmur. Okay, you will see it in AS, you can see it in PS. All right, you can also see this in any kind of supravalvular causes of AS. All right, so we'll come back to this later when we discuss murmurs separately. All right, so this is our confusion, right? This murmur we will hear in MVP also and AS and PS also. So how do we differentiate? We differentiate by the fact that the murmur of MVP will always start after the midpoint, that is the mid-systolic click that lies midway between S1 and S2. Okay, that's why we call it a late crescendo murmur. But in AS and PS, it will start after the ejection click. Okay, so what is ejection click? Ejection click is the point where the exit pathway valves like the aortic valve or the pulmonary valve, initially they show a click right just before the valve entirely opens and allows the systole to occur. Okay, it is called ejection click. As I mentioned before, please refer to cardiac cycle for all these things. These are very, very simple things and you should be thorough with these things. Okay, so ejection click, like I said, so in AS and PS it starts after the ejection click. Okay, so it is near the S1 of course and it will peak at the midpoint. So you see the difference? The MVP will start at the midpoint and the ejection systolic murmur of AS and PS will peak at midpoint like this. See? You see the difference? And that's how we differentiate between the two murmurs. Okay. So one other thing associated in this also is which valve leaflet is damaged most commonly, which can be asked in the exam. Okay. So the most common leaflet involved is the posterior leaflet. All right. And whenever there is a posterior leaflet damage, the regurgitation will be in the anterior direction. Okay, so you can see like this. Let's say these are the two leaflets. Okay, and we are looking from above. This part is the ventricle and this part is the atria. Okay, so what we are saying is this is the anterior and this is the posterior. So what we are saying is when the posterior leaflet is damaged, okay, the regurgitation will be anterior. All right, and whenever the anterior leaflet is damaged, the regurgitation will be posterior. So, okay, and the most common is the posterior leaflet. All right. So, but one thing to remember is when there will be anterior leaflet damage, okay, of course it will lead to posterior regurgitation. All right. Now, this murmur will radiate to the axilla. All right, because it's a posterior regurgitation, right? So, this also you will find when we'll study MR, we'll see it is also seen in MR also. All right, but the murmur of MR, okay, or a regurgitant lesion will be pansystolic. Okay, it will not be mid-systolic, it will not be a late crescendo, it will be a pansystolic murmur. Pansystolic means throughout the systole, like S1, S2 and something like this. All right. So, and that's how we differentiate it from the murmurs of MVP. Alright. Now, the postures which you take, like standing, sitting, things like that, they will affect the murmur of MVP, and they'll affect all the murmurs. Okay. So they'll ask you this question, like this patient has this valvular disease, and upon standing, what will happen to the murmur? Okay. So we need to know these things so that we don't have to think much in the exam. We just know what the answer is. So the more will be the prolapse. All right. So it is inversely proportional to the size of the cavity. All right. So now what happens is, on standing, the venous return will decrease, right? So the cavity size will also decrease. This will lead to increased mitral valve prolapse, okay? And this will cause the mid-systolic click to occur earlier, all right? And on squatting, there will be a increase in venous return, which will lead to increase in cavity size, and which will cause decrease MVP, and the mid-systolic click will occur later, okay? So the duration of the murmur changes with position, of course, that's what you've just seen. And so this is what you have to remember, all right? This is the most important line of this thing. All murmurs decrease in intensity with Valsalva, standing, and amyl nitrate. Okay? Why? Because of course the flow is decreasing, right? All murmurs. In all murmurs, if you do Valsalva, if you do standing, if you do give them nitrate, which will cause vasodilation, the venous return will decrease. So the flow across the valve will decrease. So all murmurs will decrease. There are two very, very important exceptions to this rule. One is HOCM, that becomes louder. Why it happens, you will study in cardiomyopathy. It will be explained to you why it becomes louder. And mitral valve prolapse, it becomes longer. We just discussed this. Okay. Upon decreasing the venous return, the cavity size will decrease. Once the cavity size will decrease, the mitral valve prolapse will increase, and this will cause the mid-systolic click to occur earlier. All right. So that's how we know the changes in the valve positions based on the body position. Okay. Now we'll just look at the clinical features very briefly. Okay. Like I said, it is asymptomatic and it is the most common presentation. Okay. So definitely the disease is slow to develop. All right. And it will, because of the ischemia that we discussed earlier here, it will cause a substernal chest pain. All right. It will also cause palpitations, which can be PVCs, PSVTs, and ventricular tachycardias, atrial fibrillations. Okay. So due to structural dilatation of the atria, you will have this AFib. So basically you can remember it like whatever disease which will cause atrial dilatation will cause atrial fibrillation. Okay, it's very, very important. So, and since the valve is damaged, disease, it will also lead to infective endocarditis or TIA. Okay, so this can lead to, of course, let's say that your infective endocarditis is causing the mitral valve prolapse, and we know that infective endocarditis lesions are friable. No, they are friable, and if they are friable, they'll break off and they'll cause embolizations. Okay, or it can be due to, since the valve is defective, there it will form platelet plugs. Okay, and these plugs can embolize also. All right, so it can also cause sudden cardiac death. Okay, of course, it is causing mitral regurgitation, and it is also causing atrial dilatation. So sudden cardiac death is also a possibility. All right, now we'll just look into some investigations. Okay, first of all, in cardiology, ECG. Right, on ECG you will see premature ventricular contractions. Okay, now when you do an echo, you will see a valvular bulge of more than 2 mm. Okay, we say this because generally on any USG guided investigation, okay, even in like transesophageal echo or all these USG guided procedures, it should be at least 2 mm. Okay, even any mass or anything, it should be 2 mm or more for you to be able to be able to visualize. Okay, so it has to be more than 2 mm. It's as a general rule. Okay, also on echo you will see a late systolic murmur as we have just done, and also what you will hear is a mid systolic click on auscultation. All right. So now primary prophylaxis will be needed for infective endocarditis. 1. Beta blockers will be given for palpitations. Like we discussed, we are having PVCs. Okay, so we will give beta blockers to reduce the heart rate and general sympathetic drive to the heart. Okay, atrial fibrillation, because of atrial dilatation we are having this, so we will give anticoagulants. Okay, and if MR is present, then we will go for valvular repair. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll do MR first and we'll do stenosis later. Why? Because we can just, MVP complication is MR, so we'll just finish it off here and then we will go back to mitral stenosis. All right. So in MR, what happens is the blood is regurgitating, which means the blood is going from left ventricle to left atrium via the mitral causes we have discussed. Alright. So now what can be the presentation? So it says the murmurs of acute and chronic MR are different. Okay. So what happens in acute MR? In acute MR, there will be obviously an acute presentation. Okay. So the body will not get a chance to remodel itself. Like not itself, the heart will not get a chance to remodel according to gradual pressure changes. So like let's say that MVP it is occurring and it is long standing, and then the MR that will develop will most likely be a chronic MR. So the murmur for that will be different from what if an MR develops acutely. Alright. So acute MR will cause a sudden exposure of large amount of blood to the left atrium, leading to left-sided heart failure. Alright. And this will require surgery. This is very, very important. Please don't try to answer conservative management for acute MR. Okay. Acute MR requires surgical repair. Whereas in chronic MR, it gets adjusted. Alright. Like I said, the body gets time to remodel the musculature of the heart. So it will get readjusted. And the presentation of both may vary. Right. Like I said. So, whereas if you see MS, okay, MS causes right ventricular failure or right ventricular hypertrophy. Okay. As a sequelae. So, that this thing MS will discuss when we do MS. Okay. So the characteristic systolic murmur you will see like you see in most regurgitant lesions. Alright. So even for MR you will hear a systolic murmur. So now we'll just very briefly look at acute MR and chronic MR. So like I said, in acute MR the heart size will be normal because there is no hypertrophy. Hypertrophy is a chronic process. The body did not get any time to cause any remodeling of the heart. But in chronic MR the heart will be large. The atria will be large. Okay. The left atrium normal, enlarged. Alright. There will be pulmonary edema. There is sudden pooling in the left atrium. That's why there is sudden pooling in the lungs also. But in chronic MR, it depends. It may or may not be present. Alright. If it's compensated, it will be absent. If it's decompensated, it will be present. Okay. In acute MR, you will have early systolic murmur. Okay. But in chronic MR, you will have a pan-systolic murmur. Okay. The more the regurgitation occurs, the annular regurgitation will keep on increasing. Okay. And there will be a time when throughout the systole, the regurgitation will keep occurring. Alright. That's why initially there will be large amount of blood going from ventricle to atria and there will be pressure equalization and it will shut the valve in acute MR, but not in chronic MR. In chronic MR there will be prolonged flow from ventricle to atria. Okay, I hope it's clear. Okay. If you look at the causes, so in acute MR, the causes can be infective endocarditis, there can be papillary muscle damage due to MI. Okay, MI is an acute process. Of course, it can cause sudden MR. Okay, and most common involved is posteromedial leaflet. Alright, and it is more commonly than anterolateral, but we have discussed this before. So, because of single blood supply, okay, the posteromedial leaflet has a single blood supply, while the anterolateral does not. So that's why it is more commonly involved, especially after MI and all. So after MVP or a flail leaflet, that basically it's saying a myxomatous degeneration is also a cause of your acute MR. Alright. Blunt trauma to chest, it will cause a commotio cordis. This you will also read in forensic medicine. Okay. It has been asked before. So please keep that in mind. Okay. Due to ventricular fibrillation. Okay. It will cause a sudden cardiac death. Okay. So these are the causes of acute MR. Alright. We'll just have a look at the causes of chronic MR also. MVP can cause both acute and chronic. Okay. So this is the important point to remember. MVP can cause both acute and chronic. Alright. So rheumatic causes. It will cause chronic scarring of leaflets of the valve. So of course it will cause a chronic MR. Subacute. The name says subacute. Alright. So it will cause chronic MR. Okay. And if you have congenital valvular defects, like, especially in ostium primum ASD. So now we can also classify these causes into primary causes or secondary causes. Primary means that there is an inherent valvular defect. Okay. And secondary cause means defect is somewhere else, not in the valve. Alright. The valve is normal, but due to some other defect, valve is getting affected. That's why it's called secondary. Alright. So intrinsic valvular damages can be seen in infective endocarditis if there is a radiation, especially in Hodgkin's lymphoma and all, where you are getting radiation for your lymphadenopathy. Alright. And MVP, you will have intrinsic damage. In an ostium primum variety, you will also have this. Alright. So now for secondary causes, of course DCM, I told you, if the heart chamber is dilated, it will also cause dilatation of the annulus. Alright. The annulus also gets dilated, and that is why there is a regurgitation. Alright. Ischemic cardiomyopathy. If there is ischemia, it will lead to papillary muscle ischemia, which will lead to MR. Alright. And HOCM. Okay. So especially when there is systolic anterior motion of the mitral valve. Alright. It will cause MR. HOCM, we'll do this SAM. It's very important. We'll will do this separately. All right. Okay. So now mitral annular dilatation is a feature of only secondary causes of chronic MR. See, it's very simple. Annular dilatation can only be seen in secondary. That's what he's saying. That's what I said. Because if the valve is inherently damaged, it will be primary. So annular dilatation can be seen only in secondary. All right. In chronic atrial fibrillation and left atrial enlargement will be seen. All right. Now this is quite frequently asked. Which valvular lesion is associated with which connective tissue or connective tissue disorder? Okay. So rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, you will see mitral stenosis. All right. And in ankylosing spondylitis, you will see aortic regurgitation. Okay. So you have to remember this. All right. Now we'll come to the severity of MR. Okay. It's very, very important. All right. The severity of MR is proportional to the diameter of the vena contracta. Okay. What is the vena contracta? Vena contracta, as stated here, is the narrowest part with highest velocity of the regurgitant jet. So see, this is the regurgitant jet, and this is the narrowest part with highest velocity. All right. So this is the vena contracta. All right. इसका जो diameter है, this will be directly proportional to the severity. All right. So a vena contracta more than 0.7 centimeter square cross sectional area is severe. All right. Volume more than 60 ml. If more than 60 ml is going from the ventricle to the atria, it is severe. Percentage of ejection fraction more than 50%. If it's going back, it is severe. Okay. The regurgitant orifice, if it is more than 0.4 centimeter square, it's severe. So this is something that you have to remember. Okay. In the exam, they can give you these numbers. Okay. And then they'll ask you the management. So you can't answer the management for a non-severe MR. Okay. Because the management will differ. All right. So now what we'll do like ECG. Okay. Because of the left atrial size is increased, you will see P mitral. Okay. I'm not going into detail because this you would have learned in ECG. Okay. So P mitral you diagnose when the P wave is more than 120 milliseconds. Okay. This shows a left axis deviation, also basically left atrial dilatation. All right. Now if you do the chest X-ray, you will see cardiomegaly. Okay. Cardiomegaly, the criteria for adults is more than 0.5 and in pediatric patients it's more than 0.6. Okay. Now because of increased atrial size, you will see a double atrial shadow on the right side. This is very, very important. Please don't make a mistake in the exam. It's on the right side. Why? Because left atria is pushing the right atria. Okay. That's why you see a double shadow on the right side. Okay. You will see pulmonary congestion. Okay. With very higher shadow. Okay. Especially in acute presentation, you will see these things, of course. And which is denoted by curly B lines on the chest X-ray. All right. You will see a walking man sign on the lateral view. Why? Because the left atrial size has increased. Okay. So the bronchial separation will increase. This angle will increase. Okay. And it looks like a walking man on a chest X-ray. All right. Of course, the investigational choice is echo. All right. These are just some relevant images. As you can see, like I said, this is the P mitral where the duration is increased. Okay. More than 120. See. Now this is the double right sided shadow, double atrial shadow. But this atria is right atria, not the left atria. Okay. This, like I said, this you will see a increased angle due to the left atrial enlargement. This is the walking man sign, like I said before. Okay. Now the treatment. Acute MR. Of course, there is pulmonary congestion. You have to give furosemide. Okay. Lasix. Okay. Now, second, you will give sodium hydroxide. Okay. This is when there is sudden decompensation leading to left ventricular failure. Right. Decreases the load on heart. Okay. Now, for chronic MR, mitral valve repair. There are multiple ways. Okay. You can use anaplasty ring. You can use neocords. Okay. Like you will implant new body tendons, or you can do cord transfers from other valves. Okay. Severe MR, like we discussed the criteria for severe MR before, is treated by mitral valve repair. Okay. As it is superior to mitral valve replacement. Okay. So now, this is what will confuse you in the exam. Okay. They'll ask you what is the treatment of severe MR. You will think, okay, if the valve is defective, let's replace the valve. But no, mitral valve is the only valve where mitral valve repair is favored over replacement. Okay. This is very, very important. Please never ever forget this. Okay. Mitral valve replacement is not preferred. Okay. Because if you replace the valve, it will require lifelong prophylaxis with warfarin. Okay. So to avoid that, you do repair. Okay. Now what is the indication of mitral valve repair? Okay. If symptomatic, severe, chronic MR. Correct? If this MR is symptomatic, if it's severe, and of course it's chronic. because in acute you will be managing the left sided failure. Okay, so repair is not done in an emergency, so it will always be chronic. All right. In asymptomatic chronic MR, okay, it is done if the left ventricular ejection fraction is less than 60%, or the left ventricular end systolic dimension is more than 40 mm. Okay, this is the systolic dimension of the ventricle. Okay, the length. If it is more than 40 mm, okay, basically it's getting dilated. So if it is more than 40 mm, you do even in asymptomatic chronic MR. All right, and the latest approach is transcatheter mitral valve clip. Okay, we clip the valve. Here, we'll use clips here so that the valve will not bulge and not cause any regurgitation. All right. So till here we are done with our mitral repair. Mitral regurgitation. In next slide we'll be doing our mitral